Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show, and that is Brad Crawford joining us from 24/7 Sports, or what did I say? Yeah, 24/7 Sports?
Yeah, that's
okay.
correct.
Okay, all right. It is SEC spring meetings down in Destin, Florida. Man, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. We are moved into our new home. We sold our previous house in 14 days. We've hit some snags with the due diligence process and closing date and all that, but we're blessed this spring, and our lives are finally slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, I know too much about all that, unfortunately, Brad. But it's starting to feel
It
a
is.
little bit. You know, we're easing our way there. I think that this is the most important time of the year for the SEC, the spring meetings. We all love media days because you get to hear the coaches talk and stuff, but it's more of a spectacle than anything. They don't just let anybody into the hotel in Destin, as we all well know. So I know you've been doing your due diligence and digging on a lot of what's going on down there. What is the most pressing issue you believe? Let's just stay with college football specifically.
Sure.
Right. What is the most pressing issue that you've learned about from the coaches?
If you ask coaches, it's definitely the transfer portal and how that calendar needs to fix itself moving forward. Kirby Smart said this week that most SEC coaches prefer a 10-day window in the spring. That's what I think I would prefer as a college football media guy. I had a coach, Power 4 coach, DM me yesterday after I tweeted, something about the transfer portal, and he said everybody he spoke to, they prefer a spring portal cycle too. Now there's, a chance that we might have one after spring camp. I don't think most coaches like that at all. But then on the Greg Sankey side of things, the biggest pressing issue college football wide is obviously the college football playoff and how that looks moving forward with the SEC and Big Ten toting the torch.
Yeah, we're going to get to that part in just a second. The portal is such a lightning rod of a conversation. So we have to remember how the portal kind of sets itself up too, right? And how players can move around in college. Because if you graduate, you can, you're kind of at your whenever, you can go visit schools and sign kind of whenever you want to. If you're not a graduate, the rules obviously are going to be a little bit differently. You said the spring window. Let's clarify that for a second here. What you're saying is coaches want the window to be open.
One uniform window before the spring semester starts. So maybe that would be, I don't know, December 30th through January 8th, maybe, because various schools, the spring calendar is different at certain universities. But I know Kirby Smart specifically said that coaches do not want it to happen after spring games. They don't want a spring portal cycle. They want one uniform cycle that comes after each season, and that being in the fall.
Would that apply to graduate transfers as well, or do we know?
I do not know on that. Yeah. Speaking on that end, I've got some news on Rahsul Faison.
You do?
Yeah, Gamecocks are obviously hoping to hear soon from the NCAA. I think it's touch and go at this point. I was told yesterday through a source that a lot of teams backed off Faison in the recruiting process in the portal because they did not anticipate the NCAA deeming him eligible. Now, South Carolina was confident. Obviously, he got NIL money this spring because he's expected to be a full-time member in this backfield as a starting running back. But I know a lot of other schools in recruiting and in pursuit of Faison pulled out because they were not confident they could convince the NCAA that, he has met eligibility requirements. So, man, it's a little bit sticky right now. And obviously Shane Beamer's going to have his hands full if Faison is not declared eligible.
I think it's a problem if he's not eligible, Brad, from a depth standpoint there. No disrespect at all to Oscar Attaway or any of those other guys. They're very capable and very good. running backs, as we all know. But unfortunately, in this league, you do have to deal with injuries, and that's where the angle they're coming from on this. So, what do you? He hired Darren Heitner.
Sure.
And Darren is excellent. There's no question about that. Darren used to be on my previous show with Darren Goldwater. We had him on a few times. Have you heard anything internally from South Carolina about that since he hired Darren Heitner, as far as how much that could speed this timeline up? I don't even know if they have a timeline. I think they thought they had a timeline, but it appears that they don't.
I mean, I would expect South Carolina to hear something by SEC Media Days, but that's still, 8 weeks away. And by then, I mean, Shane Beamer is, in his office trying to pencil in a 2 deep and who he's going to be working with during fall camp as far as the first and the twos go. I have not spoken to Darren. Darren and I met a few years ago at a Nike event. You're right on the money, JB. I mean, he knows what he's talking about. He is a big player in the NIL game. And for South Carolina and Rahsul Faison to hire him to be represented, obviously they're trying to get this in front of the NCAA's face right now and make a decision. But I don't know if we're going to hear a decision next month. Maybe it comes in July. Certainly we should hear one before the start of the season. But, man, the clock's ticking. And like you said, the depth is thin in that backfield behind Faison.
All right, so man, this is just ridiculous. As it pertains to a lot of the issues that they're talking about in Destin right now, and you got the College Sports Commission coming at some point in time. Is this something that would be removed from the hands of the NCAA as far as eligibility for players and setting up a timeline in which that decision needs to be made? Have you heard anything on that?
I haven't heard anything on that, but there's just too much miscommunication, lack of clarity with all these transfer rules. I mean, just make a blanket transfer rule. You're allowed to transfer once in your career. You're allowed to have a medical red shirt. You have to maybe sit out a year if you do transfer. There needs to be like cold, hard guidelines on transfers. And I think it started a few years ago, man, when Justin Fields, remember when he hired representation and then some other big name quarterbacks. Those kind of transfer questions were always answered pretty quickly when they hired, big time lawyers and things. And now we're seeing the NCAA just kind of pick and choose who it wants to deem eligible and who it wants to kind of slap on the wrist and say, no, you're done. So Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt quarterback, certainly put the onus on the NCAA when he challenged them and sued this offseason to get that extra year of eligibility.
Yeah, you would think that Rahsul Faison's decision, A, should have already been made, and B, that he should have a legitimate case based on everything that's come before him with the NCAA. All right, Greg Sankey has become a little bit more outspoken and a little bit more bold with his words lately as far as how he sees the future of college athletics, how he sees the future of the college football playoff, and things of that nature. Do you anticipate that this will jump? There's a bunch of questions I'll get to off of this one, but do you anticipate that the college football playoff, probably based on the leadership of Greg Sankey, will jump from 12 to 16 in 2026?
I think it will, and I think we're going to move to that 4-4, 2-2-2-1 example that has been laid out, ad nauseum this offseason. I actually like the 5 auto bids, and then you have 11 at large. Let the committee decide who the 11 best teams are after you have those 5 auto bids. That's probably not going to happen. I know some other leagues, though, have agreed with Sankey that they wouldn't mind that. But right now, the SEC and Big Ten essentially have judicial power in how this is going to look. I mean, both those are revenue-producing monsters, and those leagues own college football. So how this playoff is going to look the next 3 to 5 years is going to be based on how the SEC and Big Ten say it's going to look.
Yeah, I don't love the 4-4 model at all. I mean, okay, let me shelve that for a second and lump it into this. Shane Beamer,
the play-in games on Conference Championship weekend. This is, I mean, literally the SEC already prints money during the regular season. They're adding 2 more games to championship weekend. They're going to have more teams in the playoff. I mean, at what point is enough enough? And that's coming from an SEC homer.
That's true. So, hold on. Clarify that for a second. Play-in games on championship weekend. What do you mean?
Yes, there has been talk that if they do move to that 4-4-2-2-1 scenario, that you're going to have the SEC championship game played at noon or 1 p.m. or so in Atlanta. The two other games for two other playoff spots will be determined with the SEC sixth place team playing its third, and then fourth place team playing its fifth. So you're going to have the two teams that make the SEC championship game as auto bids, essentially, and then you're going to have two more teams taken out of the committee's hands, and they're going to play for a spot in the playoff. It's just, I don't know. This is NFL Junior. We're going to move to a 17-game schedule, it seems, for some of these elite programs if you're asking them to play, 4 or 5 extra games after their initial 12.
I don't love that at all.
Me neither.
I already feel like the SEC championship game has actually been diminished a little bit. I think that would do it even more so.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, and on the Big Ten side, JB, you look last year, it actually hurt Oregon to have to go play Penn State. They got the opening round bye at 13-0, number one team in the country, and they get to play Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. And it didn't end well for Dan Lanning. So if anybody has to complain about this whole seeding process and how things shook out, it's Dan Lanning.
Okay, Shane Beamer has mentioned, I'm all for a 9-game league schedule. I am for one, if anybody cares about my opinion. I want to see better games throughout the season. I want to see a high-quality regular season in college football in particular in this league. But Shane has also said publicly and privately, yeah, but we're going to have to figure out how to make this thing a little bit more fair. We have a built-in rival that is not in our league. And so we're not getting rid of that game. We're going to play that game every year. Kentucky, Georgia, Florida feel the same way, which is fair. The Gamecocks, quite frankly, every team in the SEC does have a Power 4, or when it was scheduled, Power 5 game on their schedule right now. So that should be applauded. There's no question about it. But if they go to a 9-game league schedule, the fear from, I think, Coach Beamer and others out there is going to be that the teams that play just 9 in the SEC are going to go Cupcake City in the other 3, and they don't like that. So do you, based on the intel that you have, believe that they will come up with some sort of scheduling philosophy that fits the entirety of the league, especially if a 16-team playoff is implemented?
Yes, and here's what I would do. I think without question the SEC is going to add a 9th conference game. That might not happen in 2026, but it's coming soon because a 9th conference game adds more money to a regular season weekend. And JB keeps going back to that. But the way I would do things is you make every schedule, a couple years out based on maybe conference winning percentage. So Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Texas, those teams that are in that top tier of the SEC, they play the toughest schedules the following couple of years based on their opponent's win-loss schedule. So let's say South Carolina, for instance, they're not going to play the meatiest SEC schedule, but they're not going to play the weakest either because, they were 9-3 last year. So the SEC office has a lot to decide. If they do move to a 9th game, I'm sure it's already been talked about behind the scenes, though, on how that would look. But, I mean, right now, SEC scheduling is completely unbalanced. We saw Texas last year get, a yellow brick road to the playoff because they only played a couple ranked teams during the regular season. Then you got a school like Oklahoma, who arrived in the SEC the same year as Texas, plays a murderer's row and went 6-7 or 5-7 as a result. So we need to find a way to balance these SEC schedules if we, in fact, add a 9th conference game.
And if they do add the ninth conference game, and I'm with you, I think it's coming. I think Greg Sankey has played his cards perfectly on this over the years as it pertains to the financial side of it coming from television revenue. But if they do that, what do you do with the other 3 games? Brad, I've said before, I think, you should require an FBS or a Power 4, a group of 5, and an FCS. You want to give everybody a cupcake? Fine, give them a win. That's cool. But you can't have 2 FCS and then a group of 5 for Kentucky and then South Carolina's got 2 P5s. That was my theory then. I haven't really thought about it much lately, but what do you do with the other 3?
I like that idea. I mean, as a South Carolina supporter, as long as Clemson stays on the schedule, I'll be a college football fan. But when we start torching some of these century-plus old rivalries for another conference game, I mean, you think any Gamecock fan, JB, wants to see them play, let's say, Arkansas every year instead of Clemson?
Right.
No. And that's not going to generate more money for either program as much as the Palmetto Bowl would. So I'm with Shane Beamer. I'm for a 9th conference game, as long as that doesn't mean the death of the Palmetto Bowl rivalry, because as a college football fan and college football purist, we still have to keep these regional games. And if you ask me, man, I would rather see South Carolina play, North Carolina, NC State, Georgia, Florida, the teams in the region more so than these Texas A&Ms, Arkansas, and Texas every year.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Big Ten and the SEC. They've talked about some sort of a scheduling alliance there.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything on that, and how would that work?
Haven't heard anything on that, but right now I have heard the big sticking point on that is much of the Big Ten's bottom of the barrel. The teams Northwestern and Maryland and those kind of squads who usually don't make it to bowl season. They're kind of complaining that, hey, we already play a 9th Big Ten game, and you're asking us to play a non-conference game against a team from the SEC now. So there's some complaints there. I don't think from the Big Ten side that's going to be agreed to. But I mean, SEC versus Big Ten is off-season fodder right now, and the Big Ten is the only conference in the country that has 3 teams with 10 or more wins projected.
No, it's kind of a 2 sides of your mouth type conversation. You want to bash on the SEC and the teams that we all thought should have been in the playoffs, but yet you don't want to play them.
Right.
Got it. Okay, that makes all the sense in the world. I think that Greg Sankey is finally speaking up the way that he is on the things that he feels like are important to not just the Southeastern Conference, but to college athletics, because he's put himself in position to do that. We've been waiting for decades for somebody to grab the bull by the horns and be a leader, and nobody has wanted to do it. And now all of a sudden everybody's unhappy with everything that he has to say. He's got the power now. They don't have they've had every opportunity, Brad. They've had
politically. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, they had the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the ACC. We've got an alliance. No, you don't. That was crap. You all threw each other under the bus anyways. Like, everybody's tried to feel like they were going to be important, but yet they never knew what to do with it when they even got remotely close. And he just let it all play out. And now everybody's upset with him. I don't understand it. Y'all have had every opportunity to do this, and you haven't done it. So
everybody's always upset with the king who sits at the top of the table. And that's who Greg Sankey is right now. And Greg Sankey knows that, despite, the Big Ten winning the last 2 titles.
Do you think his boldness and what he's had to say lately has to do with the fact that he truly believes that the things that they want, they're going to get them?
I think if Greg Sankey had it his way, the SEC would leave the NCAA and take its ball and play elsewhere. If the Big Ten wants to join, so be it. I mean, if you did have a college football in the future where it's Big Ten and SEC have partnered up, then you have the rest of the country playing football elsewhere. I mean, you're still going to get a ton of viewership because the big name programs are within those 2 leagues.
That's a good point. All right, final one. We'll get you out of here. What comes of spring meetings this week? Are any decisions made?
I don't think any decisions are made. It's going to be more, back and forth and Feinbaum joking on Lane Kiffin and that kind of stuff. I mean, I would like to see some actual news come out of it because it, like you mentioned previously, SEC Media Days is just kind of for magazine fodder and predictions and rankings and that kind of stuff, and coaches saying one-liners. But it seems like spring meetings, every now and then, there are decisions made. But as usual, Greg Sankey has a laundry list of items that he wanted to touch on. He wanted to tout the SEC, and he's done that the first 3 days in Destin.
Well, they've done that. They'll make some waves, as they always do, literally, because they're in Destin, Florida. I thought, for what it's worth, I thought Kiffin on Feinbaum, while it was a little awkward, I actually really enjoyed it.
It was cool.
I just like Lane Kiffin. So, all right, Brad, we know you're all over it, so we'll continue to follow it. We got to let you get back to your day job here, but it's always great to have you in. And we're going to get you back here. So we're 30, 33, 40.
Less than 100 days to the opener in Atlanta. So
yeah, and less than 50 until media days.
Wow.
That's kind of the unofficial kickoff, if you will.
Maybe the Braves will be 4 or 5 back by the time media days comes to Atlanta.
Oh, the Braves are going to be like 10 up by the time they get there. They're about to get hot. They're going to win this whole thing.
We'll see.
Thanks, buddy. Congratulations on the new home, and keep working hard at the pickleball.
Appreciate it, man. This job has taken me off the court here this spring, but I'm trying to get back at it.
It's all right. You got summer months coming. You'll be fine.
Talk to you soon.
See ya. There you go, Brad Crawford with 24/7 Sports.